2 o'clock in the afternoon. The auditorium at Harvard Medical School was a sea of white coats and nervous energy. The air smelled of expensive perfume and old paper, that distinct scent of prestige and finality. I stood near the back, my hands sweating inside my pockets, scanning the crowd for the three faces that had promised to be here. My mother, Patricia, my father, Richard, and my brother, Matthew. They had sworn up and down, "Of course, we will be there, Samantha. It is your big day. We wouldn't miss it for the world." I checked my phone again. 1:58. The ceremony was starting in 2 minutes. The dean was already adjusting the microphone on stage. My phone buzzed in my hand, a sharp vibration that felt like a warning. A text from my mother. "Matthew's surprise party is going long. He's having so much fun we can't pull him away. Send us a pic of you in your coat." I stared at the screen. The words refused to process at first. Matthew turned 26 today. They were at a Dave & Buster's back in Chicago. They had chosen a birthday party at an arcade over 12 years of medical training, over the single most important moment of my life. I looked up. The first name was being called. Adams Jonathan. Applause erupted. A proud family stood up in the third row cheering. Tears felt inefficient. Grief felt like a diagnosis for someone else. I felt something click deep inside my chest, like a breaker switch flipping off. The heavy, suffocating hope I had carried for 28 years just vanished. I turned around. I walked out of the double doors, leaving the auditorium behind. I left my diploma on the check-in table. I left my family's empty seats. I walked out into the cool Boston afternoon, and for the first time in my life, I didn't look back. Drop a comment and let me know where you are listening from and what time it is for you right now. I would love to know who is part of our community. I took a cab straight back to my apartment. The ride was silent, the city blurring past the window in streaks of gray and brick. My phone buzzed again. Another text from my mother. "Don't be dramatic, Samantha. We'll celebrate next week." Matthew really needed this. I deleted the thread. Then I blocked the number. When I got home, collapse wasn't an option. Sobbing felt like a waste of hydration. I walked into my bedroom and pulled my suitcase from the top of the closet. I didn't pack clothes. I packed documents. Birth certificate, passport, social security card. The tangible proof of my existence. Then I went to my desk. I turned on my shredder. The mechanical whir was the only sound in the apartment. I fed it everything else. Old photos, birthday cards signed with passive-aggressive notes, the framed picture of us at Disney World where I was holding all the bags while they ate ice cream. One by one, the memories turned into confetti. It was satisfying. It was surgical. I was cutting away the necrotic tissue to save the patient. I sat down at my computer. The blue light of the screen illuminated the empty room. I navigated to the state court website. Petition for change of name. I filled out the forms with steady hands. New first name Samantha. New last name redacted. A name that belonged to no one but me. A name with no history, no debt, no obligation. I clicked submit. The confirmation screen popped up. Your application has been received. It felt like taking a breath after being underwater for a decade. Next, I opened a new tab, one-way flights, Boston to Seattle. I chose Seattle because it was far, because it was rainy and quiet, because none of them had ever been there. I booked the ticket for 6 a.m. The next morning, then I did something that felt almost spiritual. I took my SIM card out of my phone. I walked to the kitchen sink, turned on the garbage disposal, and dropped it in. The crunch of metal and plastic was loud final. I wasn't running away. That is what teenagers do. This was something else. This was a resignation. I was quitting the job of being their daughter. I realized then that for my entire life, I hadn't been a person to them. I had been a function, a role. The responsible one. The fixer. The bank. And when an appliance stops working, you don't mourn it. You get angry. You kick it. You try to fix it. But you can't fix what isn't there. I looked around the apartment one last time. It was sterile now, empty. I lay down on the floor using my suitcase as a pillow. I didn't sleep, but I rested. For the first time in years, my mind was quiet. No more wondering if I was good enough. No more trying to earn love that was never for sale. I was dead to them. And in dying, I had finally found a way to live. The next morning, the airport was quiet. I walked through security with nothing but a carry-on and a new identity processing in the cloud. As the plane lifted off banking over the harbor, I watched Boston disappear beneath the clouds. I whispered my new name to the window. It sounded like a promise. Seattle was gray, a relentless, comforting gray that wrapped around the city like a wool blanket. I sat on the floor of my new apartment, unpacking the few boxes I had shipped. It was quiet here. No yelling, no demands, just the sound of rain tapping against the glass. But silence is dangerous. It gives you time to think. And inevitably, my mind drifted back to the why. Why did I run? Why did I cut them off so surgically? It wasn't just the graduation. That was just the final straw. The camel's back had been breaking for years. I closed my eyes and I was back in Boston. 3rd year of medical school. I was 25. I hadn't slept more than 4 hours a night in 6 months. I was living on instant coffee and peanut butter sandwiches because every spare dollar I had went to tuition or rent. I remembered the phone call vividly. It was a Tuesday night. I was studying for my boards, my eyes burning, my head pounding. My father, Richard, called. He didn't ask how I was. He didn't ask about my exams. "Samantha," he said, his voice booming with that false joviality he used when he wanted something. "Great news. Matthew has a new business idea. A luxury car rental service. It is going to be huge." My stomach tightened. Matthew's business ideas were always huge, and they always ended in lawsuits or debt collectors. "That is nice, Dad," I said, rubbing my temples. "The bank just needs a little reassurance," he continued. "Since you are going to be a doctor, your credit is gold. We just need you to co-sign the lease on the garage space. It is just a formality." "Dad, I have negative net worth. I have student loans." "But you have potential earnings," he snapped, the joviality vanishing instantly. "Don't be selfish, Samantha. We supported you. We put a roof over your head. Your brother needs this leg up. Are you really going to stand in the way of his success?" The guilt. It was their favorite weapon, sharp and heavy. I was so tired. I just wanted to go back to studying. So I signed. I later found out the liability on that lease was $250,000. If Matthew defaulted, which he inevitably would, I would be on the hook for $250,000 before I even finished my residency. They didn't care. They didn't see the risk to my license, my career, my life. They only saw a signature, a resource. Then there was the tax incident. I went home for Christmas that year hoping for a break. I found a stack of paperwork on the kitchen counter. My father's tax returns. I shouldn't have looked, but I did. He had claimed me as a dependent. I stared at the line item, my hand shaking. I paid my own rent. I paid my own tuition. I sent them money whenever I picked up an extra shift at the clinic. And yet, on paper, I was still just a child living off his largesse. He was getting a tax break for supporting me while I was drowning in debt to support myself. When I confronted him, he just shrugged. "It helps the family, Samantha. Why do you have to be so transactional?" Transactional. That was the word that stuck. Sitting in my Seattle apartment watching the rain streak the window, I finally admitted the truth to myself. I wasn't their daughter. I was their retirement plan. I was their insurance policy. I was a wallet with a pulse. And the moment I stopped paying out, I knew exactly what I would become to them. Useless. 3 months passed. I settled into my residency at a hospital in downtown Seattle. I was working long hours, but for the first time the exhaustion felt clean. It was my work, my fatigue, my accomplishment. I had blocked their numbers on my phone, but I kept a digital archive. My lawyer advised it. "Keep a record," she said, "in case they escalate." So once a week I logged into a secure cloud folder where the blocked voicemails and texts were diverted. It was a grim ritual, like checking the trap to see what you caught. I opened the folder on a Tuesday evening. There were 43 messages. I pressed play on the first one. It wasn't my mother crying. It wasn't my father begging for forgiveness. It was anger, pure, unadulterated annoyance. "Samantha, where the hell are you?" My mother's voice was shrill. "The lease on Matthew's condo is up for renewal and the landlord is asking for your signature again. You need to call us back immediately. This is incredibly inconvenient." Inconvenient. I played the next one. My father. "You are being childish. We have bills to pay and your brother is waiting on that transfer you usually send." The next one was from Matthew. "Sam, come on. I need $5,000 for inventory. Dad said you would cover it. Stop ghosting us. There was no, are you safe? There was no, we miss you. There was no, we are sorry. It was fascinating in a horrific way. It confirmed everything I had suspected. They were experiencing what psychologists call the extinction burst. When you stop feeding a narcissist, they don't reflect on why the food stopped. They just bang on the table. To them, I wasn't a person who had walked away. I was a toaster that had suddenly stopped making toast. You don't ask a toaster how it is feeling. You don't apologize to a toaster for ignoring it. You hit it, you shake it, you yell at it until it starts working again. They were in the shaking phase. They were furious that their utility had been shut off. I listened to every single message. The vitriol escalated with each day of silence. If you don't call us back by Friday, my mother hissed in the final message, we are going to come find you. You can't just abandon your family like this. You owe us. I took off my headphones. The silence of my apartment rushed back and cool and soothing. They thought I owed them. They thought they owned me. But listening to their rage, fear was absent. Instead, I felt validation. They proved me right. Every angry word was proof that I had made the only choice possible. You cannot reason with people who view you as property. You can only lock the door. I closed the laptop. I didn't delete the files. I sent them to my lawyer. Then I went to the kitchen and made myself a cup of tea. The water boiled, the whistle blew. It was the only noise in the apartment, and it was a beautiful sound. I was an appliance no more. Most people hate bureaucracy. They hate forms, hold music, and notaries. They see it as a cage. I saw it as a fortress. Over the next 6 months, I fell in love with red tape. Every form I filled out, every government database I updated was another brick in the wall I was building between me and them. I sat in my home office one rainy Saturday, a stack of paperwork in front of me. It was tedious work. Updating my national provider identifier, my NPI number, so that my medical license reflected my new name. Locking my credit reports with all 3 bureaus. Setting up 2-factor authentication on everything from my bank account to my pharmacy records. It was boring. And it was glorious. I hired a lawyer not to sue them, but to be a sentinel. Her name was Evelyn, and she was expensive. She was the best investment I ever made. We are going to set up a monitoring service, Evelyn explained during our first call. If anyone tries to use your old social security number, or if any inquiries come through under your birth name, we get a flag instantly. We don't engage. We just document. Like a security system, I said. Better, she replied. Like a minefield. My life in the hospital became my sanctuary. The operating room was sterile, cold, and governed by strict rules. There was no ambiguity, no passive aggression. If a heart rate dropped, you followed protocol. If a bleeder started, you clamped it. Cause and effect. It was the opposite of my childhood home, where the rules changed depending on my mother's mood or my brother's latest failure. One afternoon, I received my first paycheck as a resident under my new legal name. I held the slip of paper in the hospital cafeteria. It wasn't a fortune, residents are underpaid, but it was mine. 100% mine. No guilt tax, no family emergency deduction, no Matthew needs bail money fee. I looked at the name printed on the check. Dr. Samantha, redacted. It looked correct. It looked like a person who deserved to keep what she earned. I deposited it into a new bank account at a bank that had no branches in Chicago. That night I slept for 8 hours without moving. The silence in my apartment wasn't empty anymore. It was fortified. I had built a castle out of paperwork, and for the first time the drawbridge was up. The call came on a Thursday morning. I was scrubbing out of a 4-hour cholecystectomy, my arms dripping with soapy water when the nurse held up my phone. "It is your lawyer," she said. "She says it is urgent." I dried my hands and took the phone. "Evelyn." "They did it," Evelyn said. Her voice was calm, almost bored. "They walked right into the minefield." "What happened?" "I just got a flag from a major commercial lender. Your parents and your brother are currently sitting in a bank office in Chicago. They are attempting to secure a small business loan for $300,000 to fund a luxury car fleet." $300,000. They were trying to leverage me for $325,000. They listed Dr. Samantha, old last name, as the primary guarantor, Evelyn continued. "And Samantha, they forged your signature. It is sloppy, but it is there." I felt a cold shiver, but it wasn't fear. It was awe. They were so entitled, so accustomed to using me, that they didn't even think they needed to ask. They assumed I would just pay it when the bill came due, like I always did, to keep the peace. "What happens now?" I asked. Well, Evelyn said the loan officer ran the credit check. But here is the beautiful part. The system didn't flag you for bad credit. It flagged you as an error. An error. According to the credit bureaus, Samantha, old last name associated with that social security number, no longer legally exists. The mismatch triggered an automatic fraud alert. The bank thinks they are trying to use a dead person's identity. I closed my eyes and leaned against the scrub sink. I could see it. I could see them sitting in the plush chairs, smiling at the loan officer, waiting for the money that would fix everything. The bank manager is required by law to notify the authorities for identity fraud involving that amount, Evelyn said. Police are on their way to the bank branch right now. Do I need to do anything? No. The bank called the number they had on file for the guarantor your old number. It is disconnected. They are trapped in a room with their own crime, and the person they are trying to frame has evaporated. I hung up the phone. I looked at my reflection in the mirror. I looked like a surgeon. I looked like a woman who was safe. I didn't feel happy. I felt resolved. They had tried to reach into my life one last time to steal the fruit of my labor, and they had grabbed a live wire instead. The fallout was nuclear. Evelyn kept me updated, a dispassionate narrator of their destruction. My parents were charged with attempted bank fraud and identity theft. Because of the amount, it was a felony. They avoided jail time by taking a plea deal that decimated their retirement savings to pay legal fees and fines. Matthew declared bankruptcy. Again. But this time there was no sister to bail him out. He had to get a job at a warehouse. Real work. My credit score remained 820. My record was spotless. 6 months after the bank incident, I stood on the balcony of my apartment. It was raining, a soft, steady Seattle drizzle that washed the city clean. The Puget Sound was a sheet of steel gray in the distance. I held a mug of tea, watching the ferries cut through the water. I thought about them, not with longing, but with the distant pity you feel for a character in a tragedy who refuses to learn. They had chosen a party over my graduation. They had chosen greed over my well-being. They had chosen to lose me. I realized then that I hadn't lost a family. You can't lose something you never had. I had survived a parasite. I had removed a tumor that had been feeding on my potential for decades. My phone rang inside on the kitchen counter. I walked back inside and picked it up. It was a colleague, Dr. Evans. "Hey, Samantha," he said. "We are grabbing dinner near the market. Want to come?" "I would love to," I said. "Great. See you in 20. I hung up. I grabbed my coat. I looked at the nameplate on my desk, the one with my new name etched in brass. It wasn't just a name. It was a boundary. It was a declaration. I walked out the door and locked it behind me. The lock clicked, a heavy, solid sound. I was safe. I was whole. And I was finally completely free. If you have ever had to build a wall to protect your peace, share this story. You are not alone.